Hi, I'm Eamon Fennell. Welcome to another episode of the Hot Ball, courtesy of AIG and Dublin GAA. On this episode, we're going to be talking to Dublin and Australian legend, Brian Stynes, about his career, how he's dealing with COVID-19, which is a pretty remarkable story that I think you'll enjoy, and just what he's doing now as well. So, hope you enjoy the episode. If you have any questions, keep feeding them through Dublin GAA. Cheers. Thank you. Stynesy, how are you keeping? Welcome to the hot ball with AIG and Dublin GAA. It's great to see you, especially since your cruise of a 2-week holiday lasted for the guts of a month.
It was about 7 weeks actually. Yeah. So hey Eamon, how you going? Yeah. So we did go on a cruise around South America just before the whole thing got out of hand. This pandemic. And we had a beautiful 2 weeks around South America, and with 2 hours to dock in Santiago in Chile, they came on the thing and said that they've closed down their borders to cruise ships. So we went around in circles for a week, and finally they wouldn't take us in. They had the American government, everybody trying to convince the Chilean government off the ship because most of the people on it were American. And in the end, we had to spend 3.5 days with like, it was like Bill and Bob on a barge coming out with our supplies to a huge cruise ship, with 2,800 people on it, and it took them 3.5 days just to load what takes 4 hours at the dock to get onto a cruise ship. And then we finally, America said we could go there because nobody else would take us in. So we spent another 10 nights cruising up to there, and then we managed to get two flights to get out of America and then over to Sydney. I live in Melbourne, Australia. So we went to Sydney, and of course 3 days before we got home, Australia decided that everybody that came from overseas got quarantined in a hotel for 2 weeks, and you couldn't go outside the door of the hotel, outside the door of your room of your hotel. So you're in one room for 14 nights, and you got fed. You just got a knock on the door every 3 times a day, and you had to wait for 30 seconds so you wouldn't infect them, and then you open your door and you take your food in. So it was a bit like a jail, but anyway. As I was saying before, some people got 5-star overlooking Sydney Harbour. We got the Travel Lodge, which is a shithole hotel, and so that was our penance. So shouldn't swear, but anyway, yeah. So
did you even have air conditioning in it?
Yeah, no, they have air conditioning, but that's the issue. You want to get fresh air, not air conditioning all day.
Yeah.
So, but look, we've done it now, so we have the story to tell, so it's all good.
7 weeks though.
Yeah, and it's it was a sort of a long time, 7 weeks. Yeah, we went away for 2. But then as I said, people just hear there. I'm unfortunately in Melbourne to have to get in a lockdown tonight at 12 o'clock. We get locked down for another 6 weeks, so we've got to do it all again. So.
And is this lockdown that's happening? So this is the second lockdown that's going in. It's another 6-week lockdown. This is statewide, is it?
And this is just for Melbourne now. But if it gets anything out of Melbourne, then it'll be the state of Victoria. But at the moment, it's the Greater Melbourne area, so which is the 4.5 million people. And so all of the businesses, everything, because restaurants and bars had all just opened, and it just started, operating again after getting all the supplies in, and now they've got to close the whole lot again. So it's tough on some people.
You seem to be really affected by coronavirus in terms of your cruise ship, having to stay in the travel lodge for 2 weeks. Now you're going into another 6-week lockdown. But your business hasn't really suffered, has it? You've actually stayed working.
Yeah. So my business is looking up because I've got a building side of stuff, and that stayed opened, so because they're allowed to keep building and all the way through it. And I've got child minding centres, and they're allowed to stay opened as well because they figure that they need essential services. People need to put their kids into care. So, and we're subsidised by the government. So that them two things are stayed. But look, they're not as good as they were. We lost a lot of kids because a lot of people don't need it anymore and they can't afford it, and they've lost their jobs and different stuff. So everybody's hurting in different ways. But I'm fortunate enough that number one, I haven't got the illness, and none of my family have, and so that's a good thing. And everybody else, there's a lot of people worse off than we are, so we're okay, and we'll keep going and do another lockdown, and hopefully we get on top of it again, you know.
But at least you're in your own house to have it this time.
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
When you were stuck on the cruise ship and in the travel lodge, like your kids are what, 19, 21, you were saying?
Yeah, they're 22 and 20 this week.
So was there that fear of a Project X just going on in your mind when they were at home with no parents around?
Yeah, look, we did get a few calls from neighbours complaining about the noise. So we had to keep it, come on, turn the music down, you know.
Yeah.
But no, they were pretty happy. Yeah, it was a pretty popular place around here. And we weren't here. So they're pretty good boys, so they looked after the place to an extent.
All right, well, it's good to know we weren't on national news as a big party.
On Facebook or something, yeah. So all good.
Yeah, so you're kind of you're getting a bit more settled now that you're back off the cruise, because imagine like 7 weeks away from home, all the challenges that come with that, and then having the businesses that you have and the kids, and trying to even get back into a routine of just normal rhythms and routines. It's been probably challenging in that way, trying to get back up to speed with everything, having been away for so long, I imagine.
Yeah, look, it is. Look, luckily we have the computer and the phone, you know, so I was able to communicate that way. But obviously the time differences don't help.
Yeah.
So it was a big challenge in that way, where I'm up, you know, after especially on the cruise ship, like lucky enough we were able to go out for dinner and do them normal things, so it wasn't as bad. But then we'd come back, you know, my wife would go to bed and I'd go outside and start doing business, you know. So that's just because Australia would wake up, you know. So that was the way it kind of went for a while. But like everything, you do what you have to do. But in the hotel room it was good to have something to do, because you go mad, you know, just walking around the room all the time. So I was able to, you know, that kept me occupied doing business, and because the whole rules around the childcare kept changing, and governments kept changing what they were going to do and not do, so we had to keep implementing new things. But that kept me kind of busy and got through that period. But for my wife, it was a lot harder, because she didn't have a job to keep her occupied, so she used to go nuts, listen to my voice all day on the phone. And she's like, "Would you just shut up and just stop the phone call for 10 minutes?" So
if she's listening now, tell her I'm sorry about this again. She has to inflict more pain on her.
Yeah, that's right. So, no, so we got through it anyway, and then so we were really happy to be back in a lockdown where we were in our own house, you know. So we were actually quite happy with that, you know. And then so we got through that, and then obviously we got out to start doing more things and getting, you know, restrictions eased. And unfortunately, we're going back into it again. So we can't, you know, have any friends over, and we can't, you know, meet anybody. Just go out for exercise and the essentials, you know, shopping and stuff. So, you know, but we're allowed going for walks and stuff. So we're lucky enough that, you know, I actually live near the sea, so we're okay.
I was about to say, I want to touch on happier things that have happened in your career, but are the beaches at least open again, or are they shut down?
Yeah, they're open, but unfortunately we're in the southern part of Australia, so we're actually cold at the moment. This is our winter. So, but still, it's nice once the sun shines. You can imagine it.
Yeah.
You can imagine it being warm, but yeah, no, it's still nice to be able to go and do that, you know, walk along the beach, and you know, it's nicer each day and watch the sunsets and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, no, I was lucky enough to be in Australia for 3 weeks in February this year, and yeah, we kind of, the lifestyle was a lot different than what we're used to. I mean, my wife and I, we had her wife lives over there in Caloundra, just outside Brisbane. We were having serious conversations by week 2 about whether we could stay over here, but it was the summertime, obviously, so it was extra
beautiful.
I was unbelievable. Just, I wasn't used to that humidity and sweating. Like, you know, I usually sweat just breathing, but the humidity over there just drove it to a different level altogether. Yeah, right. As I said, we're going to talk about happier times. So I want to kind of come back to your career and how you kind of got involved. And then, like, you obviously played minor with Dublin. You moved to, what age did you move to Australia at then?
Yeah, so I played minor in '88, and so Desi Farrell and Jim Gavin were on my minor team. Fellow Sean Cahill that played, he was on the minor team as well, and Brian Barnes had a bit of a stint with the team as well. So those guys were on that minor team, and we and probably from your club, Senna Moylan, he got a few runs in the league for Dublin and stuff from Vincent's. But so we had a good minor team. But at that stage, I was only 16 playing that minor team, and Melbourne came and had a look at some of the games, and they had recruits going around looking at the minor games around the country, and they picked 32 of us out of the teams to come and do a clinic. It was down near Malahide, and we did a 3-day clinic with 32 guys from around the minor teams. And then after 3-day clinic, they offered 2 of us, a fellow called Tommy Graham from Roscommon. I played with Roscommon, and myself got offered a contract to come over to Melbourne. So I obviously took it, and went in 89. The end of 88 in November that year. So I was just turned 17th birthday, and I was gone. I turned 17 in the end of September, and was over here. So I had to go and redo my school. I hadn't finished school, so I finished school over here and played at Melbourne and played for the school and got straight into it. Yeah.
At 17.
Yeah. So I was on my own, make my own decisions at 17.
How was that? Like, were you living with a family, or were you just?
Yeah, at the start, I was just sort of with the recruiting officer guy for a few weeks, and with somebody else for a few weeks, and then they got me in with an old Irish couple, and then so she did all my cooking and washing and all that sort of stuff, and so that was fine then, But as far as everything else, I was you're my own person, I had to open bank accounts and do myself, and get health insurance and get all the different things that normally you would do as you become an adult, So I grew up very fast.
But even at that, like trying to get that stuff done around 88, 89, technology wasn't so far advanced back then.
No.
So trying to get advice from people was obviously, I'd say, challenging, and trying to Google how to do things wasn't obviously there at the time. So
no, there was nothing. No, you just had to ask questions to people in the club and ring up different people and ask the people you're living with, and different players that were there, and trying to ask them what do you do and what not, and then so it was a learning curve. My brother was here at the time, but the first 8 weeks I was here, he was back in Ireland on his holiday for Christmas. We didn't go back for Christmas. It wasn't like nowadays where they fly you back every 5 minutes. That first stint was from that November till the following December, so it was it was like 14 months or so before I seen my family again. So it was a really long time as a young person. I had 4 other siblings that were home, So it was a long stint. But
did all that, it obviously helped you grow as a person, but did it impact your performance in terms of your preparation for games and all that kind of stuff? Because you're going to new city, new culture, and new experiences, and you have to kind of grow as a person, and then you're kind of taken away from when you're playing GA at home. You're kind of just able to go out and play and not have to worry about all these extra things. Do you think that might have played a factor in your preparation for games? Did it impede you in any way at all?
I think there was. I had the other Irish guy there. He was probably in the same boat, but he only lasted a year. But it definitely it made you very responsible very quickly, because if you just went out and do the wrong thing and just went to nightclubs and pubs and all that, which we were able to do, but because nobody was there to police you. But look, you just wouldn't have got very far, and I was pretty committed to making it, because when I'd left, you got your parents at home, and you're always thinking about your dad and mum, and that they like you at home, and so you gave away a lot to and with the Dublin team and all that I was playing with, trying to play minor the next year. I still had another year or so to play, so that's in your mind, that you want to go over and prove yourself, and that you do the right thing. So within reason, I did the right thing, and I looked after myself. But I have to say the studies weren't as probably good as they would have been if I had my dad looking over my shoulder. That might have, my schoolwork might have been as good as it could have been. So, and I might have missed a few days of school that you normally wouldn't, if
Yeah,
you had
yeah.
a big night out after a football game or something. But
You got life lessons rather than your inter-cert lessons.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, but no, yeah, it was all, in hindsight now, I wouldn't give it back,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it got me ready for a lot of things in life after that.
But like even playing over there, that must have been like, because you were probably the first wave of Irish players that really went over and was making inroads. So was that a bit of a challenge for you initially, trying to, like, was there a bit of a block from the Aussies watching these Irish lads coming in, or was it just very much, oh, you're part of the team, come on in?
Yeah, very, very, very different than what they get nowadays. Nowadays, it's every one of them try to make the person fit in. They try to do, they with everything from the club, the backup they get. They have somebody chaperoning them, making sure that they're okay and they're integrating and the whole thing. In our day, it was sink or swim. There was hardly any of that, And the funny thing was, I remember at the start, like the coach that we had, he was under 19 coach in Melbourne, because in them days they had under 19 Melbourne team and a reserves and senior. And so under 19 coach and reserves coach was the same guy. And he was from country Victoria, and he didn't agree with the Irish experiment. And he thought it was a waste of a draft pick to waste an Irish person when there was good enough players in the country to take, So I got there was no love lost between the two of us, and he was really, really hard on me and the other Irish guys that came. And so it was hard. And then with the players, they were just you were trying to take their spot, some of them, So it was very, very competitive the whole time. So, and look, don't get me wrong, I made great friends, in the long term out of it. But
Yeah, yeah.
it was hard work, and it was survival of the fittest. And like there was a lot of long conversations back to my dad going, have I done the right thing here? This is so hard, and it's so, nobody really cares, too much,
But it's probably a bit of a survival of the fittest, both mentally and physically, because physically there's new demands on you, like the game over there, and even the training. Like, I know boxing was part of the training programs for a lot of teams. I've like even the endurance running, acclimatizing to the heat, but then the mental challenge of having to deal with that as a young lad, of like trying to get into a team when there's people that are saying, no, this is an Australian sport, we only want Australians playing, and trying to combat that and get the disciplines in place and constantly feel like you have to prove yourself. So that kind of war of attrition, did that kind of just make you the player that you became to be, with all these kind of learnings, all these challenges?
Yeah, look, I suppose the other side of it was that things that in Gaelic football before I left were going obviously very well, because as I said, I was playing minor and we got the All-Ireland final. I was only 16 and I was playing senior at my club at the time, and and all the other age groups, and it all came quite easy, the sport, for me, my goal was to play for Dublin seniors, and it was kind of an easy track in my mind. But all of a sudden, this new goal, and was much harder. There was like there was a bigger pool of people here. The training was a lot advanced to what we were doing back home, because obviously it was semi-professional, and it was really, really hard. Like we went into a pre-season straight away where we ran up with Mount Bulla here, it's called. We ran up the mountain, 15.5 kilometers up a mountain, really steep mountain, and that was a race between 52 guys, and you were tested and timed, and then the next day you had to go on another grueling thing, and that went for 4 days, and it was another day we had to, in the preseason, we had to do 100 meter sprints in a row, and you had to get 45-second rest between each one, so you did one every minute, and like it was extreme stuff, that you were doing, and plus you were doing weights. We never touched weights before.
Yeah.
And then we're going into the gym, and you just feel like the biggest weakling in the gym, because they had like the weight on the bar, the bench press, it just sits there, and then fellas add weight to it. I remember picking it up, and I could hardly lift the bloody thing off my chest. So I'm thinking, holy shit! I thought I was I thought I was pretty strong when I got there, but you're not strong. You haven't done any weights, you know.
Yeah,
So it was stuff like that. But and then it was what I thought where I should have been was always not as where I was getting, so that made it harder emotionally, because you think if you go back and don't play, you're going to be a failure, and it was that with you as well. So it was a constant battle mentally, and the physical thing, as well. Like I had 7 operations in my 4 years in Melbourne,
jeez.
and so I was always coming back from an injury, and trying to, and the reason being that your young body is not ready sometimes for that. We all develop at different times, but I just wasn't ready for that intensity of training. And so I had no problem doing it when I was able to do it, but my body kept breaking down. So you'd have an operation, you get over it, and you come back, and then you will be behind the 8 ball trying to catch up with these other guys, so it was. But in saying that, I was lucky enough to make it and play the AFL football. Whereas a lot of guys never got to do that, and that was, at least I did that before I went back.
But it's funny you touch on that, because I think that's been the downfall for a lot of players. Like, I actually put myself in that bracket where I got brought onto the Dublin team in 2005. Never really done a gym program or anything. First gym session, I couldn't do one chin up. Literally couldn't do one chin up. And I was looking at Darren Holman, Kieran Whelan, Shane Ryan, Darren McGee, all these other midfielders who were just throwing weights around, and I was like a little stick. And I remember Paul Clark pulling me aside to say, look, you're going to have to bulk up, and you're going to have to bulk up soon. So, like, you go into creatine, but my body probably wasn't ready for what I was trying to do. And as a result, I've had a bit of a prawn cracker body ever since. Like, I keep breaking down every chance it gets. It just says, this is too much. But you were obviously trying to go through that. And 7 operations in 4 years is actually staggering to hear that as a number. When you make the decision to come back in '94, was it just to kind of say, I just want to come back and start enjoying football and go through like just an easier schedule? Like, there's not the intensity of having the gruelingness of running up a mountain for 15 kilometers or 100 meter sprints. Like, was that part of your thought process?
No, not really. Like by the time I got through it, and the last year here, I had a free run of injury, of not having an injury. But I was playing I'd gone from Melbourne to Port Melbourne, which at the time was like the 2nd division. And so I finally got a run of no injuries, and I really, really loved my last year playing for Port Melbourne, right? So it's like say the English Premier League, you play for the 2nd division, and it was the VFA, it was called at the time, which is now the VFL. And so you still had your game was still on TV, some of your games and different stuff, and it was, so you went from being a small fish in a big sea to a big fish in a small sea, so it was much more enjoyable, and they actually loved having you there, and you were one of the main players, so they're relying on you, and all of a sudden I'm not injured, and I was playing in the forward line. They'd always played me in the back line at Melbourne, and I hated the back line. And fellas that played at me in Dublin will tell you that I was a shit back anyway. But, so once I got to the forward line, I could actually express myself and show them what I was able to do, And at the end of that year, unfortunately, the guy that was my coach in there went to Sydney as an assistant coach, and he said that I'm going to recommend a draft you to Sydney Swans. And so I booked myself in for the draft. He didn't take me. He rang me and said, "Oh, look, I didn't push it hard enough because I'm just new in the club. But if you just maybe next season, And I said, "Look, I've had enough. I always wanted to play for Dublin. I always wanted to." And I said, "Look, Dublin had actually lost a few up to 90, the end of '93, and I thought this is my opportunity, not to miss out. This team is pretty good. I think they might do something, and it's a chance to go back." So, and during that '93 season, while I was playing for them, I had flown back twice to go for interviews for the fire brigade. And so I was starting to think about it, because I needed to not just rely on getting drafted again back to Melbourne. I wanted to have another option, So I was already in the process of it. And to answer your question, I had no problem with doing that type of training. And fellas that played with me over there will attest to it. My strengths were endurance and doing the strength stuff. So I was definitely going to continue that too, because that was something that I thought would get me ahead of the rest of the posse.
You've answered my question by saying that you wanted to come back and be in the Dublin Fire Brigade, because if you're going to pick a more grueling job to be in, I don't know what it is, so you aren't coming back for the easy life. You're coming back to work in Dublin Fire Brigade and come back to an inter-county setup. So that's, again, both physical and mental demands, again, that you just kind of seem to throw yourself into every situation. Was it coming back into the Dublin Fire Brigade, because it is such a grueling job in terms of the demand on the body, the work you're seeing, also the shift work, because I've actually interviewed Mikey Carton and I've interviewed Lindsay Davey, both work for the Dublin Fire Brigade at the moment. And Lindsay was saying because of COVID-19, she can't swap her shifts around, so she's very regimented on her schedule, and she can't now swap and get off training, so she's kind of concerned about missing games and missing matches. Was that a challenge that you had as well in terms of the workload?
Yeah, look, it was challenging with actually, like you say, getting to training and getting your matches and swapping around shifts and all. But we were obviously, there was no set rules in the fire brigade of getting off, so you were always doing that. Aside from fellas who just turn up to training, whereas you've done a whole lot of things to try and get people to work for you and get officers to allow you to come out for an hour here or whatever it was and get it covered. And so it was always a challenge and a balancing act trying to get to play, and do your games. The actual physical thing of the fire brigade, I mean, when you're working a night shift and you're on an ambulance and you're out all night, you are stuffed, when you get to go straight to a game the next day. So things like that does impede you. But a lot of the time you try to manage it that you're not going to be, before the big games, that you're not going to be hopefully working a night shift, but sometimes it just happened and you had no choice and you had to turn up, and I remember, guys in the fire brigade, would be given out to me for trying to get them to go out and cover me on a call because I want to sleep because I have a game the next day. And these guys had no interest in Gaelic football. They were soccer heads, and
yeah.
I don't care about their game next day, So it wasn't as easy as But in saying that, you had to do it, and you just got on with it. But in the other side of that was you did have a lot of time off to do extra other things, so the shift work wasn't as bad in some instances. But yeah, look, it was what it was. It is what it is, But it was at that time, you didn't have a lot of jobs to just walk into,
Yeah. But you when you come back in '94, you go into that job, and as you say, Dublin are kind of there or thereabouts year on year, and then '94 again, so close, but just not over the line. When you came back in '94, did you settle in straight away, or did it take you a few weeks and months to kind of get more embedded into this? Because you only came back for the National League, was it?
Yeah, so I came back, and as I said, in January, but I had the 2 weeks I flew home for the fire brigade interviews the year before. Somebody has rang Pat O'Neill at the time and said, Brian Stynes is here. You should get him out for training. And the next minute, Pat O'Neill rings me and goes, "Hiya, Brian. Do you want to chop down for training?" I went, "Sure, I'd love to." So I was here for a week and just running around doing interviews at the fire brigade. And the next minute, I'm out doing training with the Dublin lads, and they were playing Meath. I remember they were playing Meath that week in the Leinster Championship. And so I was just on the B team, midfield, against Jack Sheedy and somebody else. Probably Paul Whelan or somebody, and at the time, and so I just played a game on the Tuesday, the Thursday night, and the Saturday morning. The game sort of came. I think it might have been 30 minutes on the Tuesday night and 25 or 30 minutes on the Thursday and 10 minutes on Saturday. And but I was fit in the middle of the season, so and I played okay. I didn't feel, for me it was a big change up, And Pat O'Neill sort of said to me, "Look, you're at the standard. If you want to come back, we'd love to have you, sort of thing. So I had a kind of an insight that it was going to happen, you know, that I would get looked at. But then when I came home at the start of that year, it was really bad weather at the start of that year. So I needed to have a game to try and impress to get into the panel. And there was no games, you know. So I remember we had a practice match organised with Ballybowden and Blessington, because just to get some football, and I kind of made them bloody get a practice game, and it was the middle of winter. And so next minute anyway, I remember Brogan turned up, who was a selector at the time, turned up to watch this game in the middle of bloody Wicklow somewhere, you know, practice game. And the guys are going, oh, look, one of the Dublin selectors is here. I wonder why, you know. And I said, yeah, what a coincidence, you know. And so anyway, then I, you know, they obviously watched me there, and so they gave me a call and says, come on down to training. And I went down. I was only here a few weeks, you know, because I had spent Christmas in Bondi Beach with my wife, and was, you know, I was training with a round ball for the first time with her on the beach, you know, and kicking the ball and trying to find a park, and so that's who I'm training with. And she didn't even play football, and she's throwing the ball to me and stuff, you know. And next minute, a few weeks later, like I said, I've come home and it's freezing cold. It was February, you know, frozen and that. And next minute he calls me and says, right, come down. I did a training session, and he goes, right, you're a sub for the weekend against Kildare down in Kildare for the first round. I think it was the second half of your league. It used to start before Christmas, so it was the last few games after Christmas of the league season. And so I'm standing on the bench. They didn't even have a tracksuit. They didn't have a Dublin tracksuit. So they gave me shorts and socks, you know. And so I was down in what's their ground in Newbridge.
Newbridge,
down
yeah.
in Newbridge, and I remember my parents and my family ever came down in the stand, and so I got a Melbourne tracksuit on, running up and down the sideline, and I remember we were 2 points down, and they said, right, you're on, you know. It was about 15 minutes to go or something, and I ran on, and like baptism of fire, like it was really wet ground, you know, trying to pull my feet out of it. I remember I got a ball early, and I kicked it, and I hit the post and came back going, oh, crap, you know. And then I've got another one, and I've kicked it in and dropped it into the goalie's hands. And I thought, oh shit, like, you know. And anyway, we're in the middle of the field. I remember somebody's kind of come in and bumped into me, you know, when I was down trying to pick up a ball. One of them's hit me in the head, so I jumped up and threw the ball at him, and a big row started, you know. And I thought, well, at least I'm doing something. And, a big row started, and then the row finished, and we seemed to get going, and we got 2 points and had a draw, you know. So I was going, well, I didn't really contribute much but start the fight. And,
Dream debut, yeah?
Yeah, so we got a draw, and I thought, well, look, that's okay. Hopefully, you know, I'll get a better go the next day. And so I had another 2 weeks of training before the next game against Down, and then I get to this in Croke Park. I'm thinking this is a nice surface, you know, I'll be able to down here. Anyway, started on the bench, finished on the bench. didn't even get on the ground. I'm thinking, what am I doing? Like, how are you going to see me? There's only one more game now, you know, and then you're not going to see me. So anyway, we played Derry last game. They just won the All-Ireland final the year before.
Yeah.
And so he next minute I'm starting. So he said, we're going to start you. And we played Derry, and I played well in that game. I played as a half forward, extra midfielder thing. And you know, so we beat Derry that game. We played well, and I played well. And so then you know, I thought, you know, this is it. Hopefully I'll be fine. And then we played a quarter final the next, you know, 2 weeks later against Armagh up there, and it was torrential rain. I don't know how they played the game, but it was just, the pitch was in bits. I started half forward. First 15 minutes, I think they kicked 2-3 in the first 15 minutes. Armagh kicked, and the ball never even went up the field. So and I was taken off at 15 minutes. I've gone past him, but the ball hasn't come up yet.
Yeah.
Our Pat O'Neill saying, you know, last in, you know, first out, and I said, oh, whatever. And anyway, we were beaten. They lost the game, and then so it was a touch and go then, because we were doing practice games, and, you know, as you do around the country, and then I got a good run then, you know, and I was, you know, starting to get my, you know, the ground was getting harder, and, you know, I was starting to get to the run of the game and getting into the skills of it. And then we were playing the games between each other, and they were going well. And I thought, great, I should be fine. I'll be in midfield in all these practice games, and everything will be grand. And then my wife, who was my wife now, was only we were only getting engaged then, so she didn't come back for the first year. I said, give me a year, and try and get this thing set up. And the Australian team was ringing me every week to say, come back, we'll because they still pay me. They paid you well, in this league, and they said we want you, there's a spot there, and so they were monitoring. And I said, look, it's a knockout thing here. We'll see how it go, and then my wife flew over for the Kildare. It was Kildare in '94, the first round. Wife flew over. She comes in 2 days before the game, and I said, "So I've got bad news for you. I haven't been picked. I'm on the bench, and I couldn't believe it. I was pretty confident in myself at the time that I thought I was good enough, and anyway, I wasn't picked. And I remember going up to Pat O'Neill and said on the Tuesday night, and said, I can't believe you're not going to pick me. And he goes, sorry? And he said, I haven't picked the team yet. And I said, I know you're not going to pick me. You've got me in the B team. I haven't been in that team yet. And that's, I don't know if you know how it goes. You B team on a Tuesday night, you're constantly in not being picked, And he said, look, I haven't picked the team. Anyway, the Thursday night comes again, and he calls me in before he announced the team, and he goes, I haven't picked you. And I went, I said, at this stage, I said, I know you weren't going to pick me. I told you that on Tuesday, But he said, you're going to be the first substitute in. And I said, oh, okay, and he says it could be after 15 minutes, And I thought to myself, nobody puts anybody on after 15 minutes. In them days, it was 3 subs, And so anyway, that was it. And so I told my wife, okay, if we lose this game, I'm on the flight next week. And the team over there had paid for the flights and everything. He said, no, great, you're going to come back. Because I hadn't started the fire brigade. I was on a thing where, it was a year later by the time I actually got into start. So with that, she went out, and she was sort of in two minds whether she wanted me to win or lose, because I was going to go back to Australia with her, And I remember...
She was in the Melbourne track, so was she in the stand?
Yeah. She was going, great, he's going to come back with me and everything will be fine. And I remember sitting in the bench, because nobody else knows this in the team. And 15 minutes into the game, we were down 7 points to 1, I think it was, against Kildare. Kildare were all over them. And next minute, I remember it was the 19-minute mark. Pat O'Neill says, right, warm up. And I remember starting to warm up and thinking, why did I say I was good enough to play? I'm thinking, holy crap, what am I going to do here? We're 6 points down. And he gives me the slip, and he goes, right, go on, you're on. It's 20-minute mark. I remember running out thinking, shit, I better prove myself now after telling him that he's mad not picking me. And I gave the sheet to the referee, and I remember standing there and thinking, don't stuff it up. And at the very start, a big ball was like a Gary On was kicked up in the air. I remember standing out near the sideline going, please don't drop it, please don't drop it, please don't drop it. And the ball came in, I caught it, gave a handball off and thought, okay, I'm off. And I remember we came back, we got a point in injury time to draw the game, the last kick of the game to draw the game. And then I started every game ever after that in my career. So that was the my baptism of fire. But and obviously we got to the All-Ireland final that year, so we didn't go back to Australia, and my wife ended up coming and living there the next year.
So she never forgave Pat O'Neill for bringing you on in the 19th minute.
So Pat, in fairness, was true to his word,
Yeah, it's fair. Actually, one of the things you pointed out there about challenging the manager, I don't think that happens enough in the game anymore. I think people kind of accept it, or if they after talking to a few players, and this isn't Dublin specific now. It's kind of wider county. Having talked to a few different players, it's like when they don't get what they want, they just toys can go out of the pram and they just drop themselves off the panel, or they go into that self-hate state of mind where they just kind of everything's against them, and no matter what they do, they're never going to get a look in, so they don't try and they don't push themselves. It was great to see that you knew your strengths, you knew what you could bring to the table, and you had the I suppose, the confidence to be able to challenge Pat in his decision. That's huge to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I never did that in Australia. And, I took all this abuse off managers in Australia.
You were just finally venting, were you?
Yeah, and I remember leaving Australia and said to myself, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to sit there and take that sort of stuff again without speaking up for myself. And it was a lesson that took me, that 4 or 5 years to learn, the 4 years in Melbourne anyway, to learn. Because I did do it a bit more when I left Melbourne. But as I said, it was one thing I said, I'm not going to do that again. And it was something that I would pass on to guys is if you're not confident and you're not going to back yourself, nobody else is, so you do need to stand up for yourself, and especially at that level,
As you said, it reaped the rewards because you got your chance, you proved yourself, and then you started from there on in. And this is where I want to lead into now, because time is getting away from us. It is that 95, that moment where you've had a good run of games, you've played in your favourite position in midfield, you've got the confidence, and then you start understanding people's games because you're playing more with them in your favourite position. Did 95, did the sun, the moon, the stars, and everything just aligned for you, and you just had that year you dreamt of?
Yeah, look, it was fantastic. 94, we left it behind us. Like, it was just terrible. It was just terrible the way we lost it. We should never lost that final. It was terrible. But 95, everything came together, I think, as the whole team, and for me, I was a year into it, so it was better. And, I think everything, especially up to Leinster final and sort of into semi-final. But I still think we probably, if we had a drawn against Tyrone, because they did get a disallowed point at the end, if they had got that draw, I don't know what would have happened in the replay, because Charlie Redmond would have been suspended, and a few of us were kind of getting a bit tired at that stage, and it was an old team. So, faith obviously had something to do with it as well, that we did get over the line that day. But we definitely, all the stars did align that year to make it happen, and it hadn't happened before. So very, very lucky to have been a part of it. And, that was a highlight of my sporting career.
And what did it mean to you to be able to go back to the likes of the Ballybowden and the schools around Bowden with the cup? Because I know you're, still a big club man, and I actually want to touch on Bowden playing in the All-Ireland final after this now. But was that just you cementing you back home, being able to bring the cup around, share that moment with fans, with family, with friends? Was that just everything that you wanted when you made the decision to come back?
Yeah, it was fantastic. As I said, we hadn't done it for 12 years at that stage, but it was, for Ballybowden, there hadn't been a player for a long time, to do it. But it was Sean Doherty had been in Ballybowden before, but he had left and gone elsewhere after that. But it was, it was a huge, huge honour for me, especially with your schools, where you're brought up. I was in St. Joseph's in Turnure. I was able to go back and bring the cup there, and then even with the De La Salle's rugby school I went to, just to bring it there, and they were as appreciative. And obviously with the club, when we had I brought the whole team, came back to my club when we brought the cup there one night, and there was about 2,000 or 3,000 people in the car park. It was enormous, and they did a great job, Ballybowden, at the time. And it was just a great time. And then we actually won the championship, a month or so later.
Yeah, no, unbelievable.
And that was the first one they ever won in the history of the club. So it was an amazing year for me, because we never won either after. So it all happened in one time, but you can't plan these things. It'd be nice to have spacing out a little bit to get another cup. But it was a fairy tale for me, and it was a lifetime ambition, and to do it all and in both instances at the same time, it was fantastic. Yeah.
Well, you've got to achieve so much in your career, playing in the AFL, making that decision at an early age, coming back, winning an All-Ireland, winning a club championship with Bowden, and then also representing Ireland and getting to play against your brother Jim. that must have just been a surreal moment as well. Like, like nearly, like I'm just going to say, was it the cherry on the cake kind of job, being able to play that moment and have that with him on the pitch?
Yeah, yeah. Look, to play with him here, first of all, with Melbourne was one of the, sort of the minute he went there, that's what I said I wanted to do. I wanted to go over and play with you. So that was a great moment. And then the next part of that was to play for Ireland was a great honour for me, and to play against Australia and Jimmy playing for Australia. Plus, I had a bit to prove to a few Australians that that I was, that I think I was better than you thought I was. But so to do that and go back, and that was amazing. And for my family as well in Croke Park that time, for us to play against each other. That was his last game against me. The 2 games. That was his last game ever. So that was a huge thing for me to do with my brother, even though we were on opposite sides. With the banter, it was good fun, and I got to play okay, and so that was the icing on the cake. That was something I always wanted to do as well, was to play for Ireland, because he had done it at an earlier age in '87, and it stopped then. And I thought I'm never going to get a chance, but they started in '98, so it was great to be able to get picked number 1, and then to play and have an influence was fantastic,
Absolutely, and the reason why I wanted to touch on the Bowden thing as well, because I remember what Andy McEntee did before the All Ireland final is bring the team up to meet Paul McGinley up where the memorial is for your brother, and just to still have a part of it, to still have it. Did you know that was going to happen? Did Andy ring you and say, "Look, we're going to do this," or is it just?
No, I didn't know any of that. No. No. So that's great to hear. That they still use something there, and it's great because Paul McGinley's a great fella. He played with Jimmy's team, and my dad was his manager, and I used to train with them. Because I was younger, I trained with them, and Porrick Harrington actually was on my teams coming up through Ballybowden, and we were in class together a little bit. So we so it was amazing two golfers that made one British one titles and Ryder Cups and all this sort of stuff, and coming from being involved with me and my brother, and my dad being his manager. So it was great. I actually met Paul when I was in an interview on that Ireland final day on the sideline, about 4 or 5 years ago, and me and Paul did one interview together and on the big screen, and so it was fantastic, to meet him again and catch up, But so that's interesting to hear.
But there's a few things I'd love to talk to you a bit more about, and that's obviously one of them. But the kind of a few minutes left that I just want to touch on is this year now, the 25th anniversary. I think you're hoping to come back for the All Ireland final, were you? And will you come back now in Christmas time?
Probably not. Pity. My 2 kids were going to be traveling around, and we're going to meet us. Myself and my wife were going to meet us there, and the whole family was going. My dad and my mother and father were going to be home. They live out here, and we're all going to go to the game. So it was a big deal, and then meet up with the team and all that. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen now. And the week before Christmas, the problem is they're not going to let us travel from here without doing 2 weeks quarantine coming back. And so if I went over and did that, I wouldn't be able to spend Christmas with my family. So. I think it's just all too hard unless things ease up and we get a miracle cure before then. I don't think it's going to happen. I was hoping that they wouldn't do it this year, and we could do a 25 and 26 year next year, and they could combine them. So but it doesn't look like I'm going to get my wish.
No, well, you never know. But yeah, I think I was talking to Anthony Daly, and obviously Clare won the Hurling All Ireland, so he was looking forward to that moment as well. And he said the biggest challenge now is actually trying to get into the suit after having such a good time at home with COVID and being close to the fridge. So yeah, look, I think there's a few challenges. Yours are a bit different than his now, but as I said, I have about 10 more questions I want to talk to you about, but I know you have a meeting and time is getting away from us. So I have 2 questions to ask you. That's it, is just as a kind of wrap up. The first is, who's the best player you've ever played with?
That's a good question. Who's the best player I ever played with? Probably, Jesus.
Everyone answers. Collie Moore and the answer. And my Collie's the nicest guy in the world, and I had to make him even get an answer out of him.
With the Dublin team, because I've obviously played with the Irish team, I've played with some good players there, you know. But I did actually play a practice game, an exhibition game with Jack O'Shea one day, and he was him and Brian Mullins were my childhood heroes. So I got to play with him. So I'd say he would be probably my best one. But with the Dublin team at the time, probably Paul Curran was probably the best player at that team. But we had some very good ones in that team. I mean, you know, Keith Barr was obviously there at the time, and Desi Farrell was a very good player too in that team. You know, and Charlie's free taken. You know, they'd be players that would stand out. But yeah, no. So that'd probably be the guys. You know.
Yeah, I actually I grew up watching the Fosters top 5 catches, and I used to love the Aussie rules side of it. But like as a midfielder coming up between yourself, Jack Sheedy, but Anthony Total, I thought there was an era of great midfielders in around when you were playing as well. Like Total was one of my favourite players to ever watch. Just lucky enough that he managed me with the Irish team as well. But I think Jack O'Shea is a nice one to pick. Then, if on the current Dublin team, if you could play alongside one of them players, who would you pick?
Probably Kilkenny and probably Kilkenny. He's just a marvellous player. He sets up all the play. He'd finish all the stuff off, and he can hold it, the temperament, you know, to come and go. But he's just one of a band of them, though. You know, there's a few very good players on that team, you know. But he would probably be the one I'd pick out. I had to only go for one, you know.
And he dipped his toe in the water with the Aussie rules. Do you think it's something that he could be a success in if he did ever make the decision to go over?
Definitely would be. Definitely. But yeah.
No, I haven't got one.
I've got. So yeah, definitely he would be it. So but he would be 2 or 3 more of them guys would probably make it now at this stage.
Well, look, let's hope that doesn't happen. I know you probably get referral fees and scout fees and all that kind of stuff, but let's hope that we keep riding the crest of this wave and none of them go on the export market just yet. Stynes, as I said, I could talk to you for another 45 minutes and I still wouldn't cover what I want to cover, but I know you're busy there and I know you have to get away. So I want to thank you firstly for giving your time up, because I know you're still getting up to speed and there's new things happening and new developments happening back in Oz that you're trying to get set for. But it was great to catch up, great to reminisce. Hopefully things do change and you do get to come back for the reunion, and if you do, we'll definitely, I have a bar with Michael Darren McCauley, so we'll bring you in for a pint or two, and if you do get the chance to come back. So look, thanks for your time. Stay safe.
It was a pleasure. I will say one thing. I will have to mention one person because he'll kill me if I don't. Paul Beelan, best player I ever played with.
We'll cut that out, Beelo, don't worry. I'll send it to him separately.
Say we're joining the hip, so I better mention him.
Yeah. He's a good bloke, Beelo. Well, look, cheers for your time, Stynes. Stay safe.
Take care. Bye-bye.